We have a lot to do today. I'm sure you're excited. I know I am. We'll get right into it. To begin with, and I can't turn the lights off because the TV responds to that and gets dimmer. In one of the more helpful inventions, I'm sure, for all history. Anyway, we're moving into Unit 2, okay? This is where we were, right? Unit 1, all that jazz. Unit 2, right over here. Click that guy. It's set up the same way. You got our prompts. We have a couple this time. We have a video we're going to look at here in a minute, and then your homework, just like it was in the last unit, okay? All right, anyway, the informative synthesis. Let's close up. All right, source text. Vonnegut. Slaughterhouse 5 is this book. It was like Friday or Saturday. I sent you guys that PDF. Hopefully you got that. So if you do not have the book yet, and I strongly advise you to get the book, I think it will just help you. Until then, you have that PDF you can use. I just feel like it's harder. I mean, this is a, 250-page novel. Reading 250 pages, like scrolling, that just seems like it would be harder to me. I could be wrong, okay? If it works for you, great. My personal preference, I guess, I would rather have the book. Part of the reason I chose the book, it's crazy famous. You can find it all kind of places. You can also find it all kind of places used, so relatively cheap, like $10, something like that. Like you can find this book, okay? I should also tell you, due to it being kind of old and super famous, it was published originally in 1969. There's all kinds of covers for it. This isn't even the most recent cover, actually. There's a really ugly brown one that's rolling around that I'm really fond of because that's the one I read in high school because I was a nerd. But whatever you got, whatever version of Slaughterhouse 5 you have is correct, okay? Even though it might look different. The other thing I should say, there's different sizes. This only matters because at various points this unit, we will talk about parts of the book, just like we've done this whole time, right? I'm gonna give you page numbers. And the issue will be, if you have a smaller book, because this has kind of become the standard size, but there's smaller versions, your pages will be different. It's paginated differently, our SAT word of the day, pagination. Anyway, all right. That little bit of a rant out of the way. That's our source text. We also have a secondary source that I've provided. We'll read that later. It's an article. We got time on that, but it's on Coursed-In already. And then you'll choose 2 more, and we'll talk about that. All right. Length, at least 4 pages, not counting the works cited. Now, I understand you just turned in a 3-page paper. I also understand, because I've looked at a few of them already. I've already had marker on my face now. That 3 pages might have felt like a bit of a struggle, and now I'll tell you you owe me 4, and you're kind of upset about that. Understand this. You're going to have to talk about a book, okay? You're going to have to talk about an article that I give you. And you're going to have to talk about 2 more articles that you find yourselves. That's a lot of material. That's not a poem. See what I'm saying? So 4 pages, in my experience, tends to be relatively easy for most students, all right? I'm not saying it's going to be fun, but I am saying if you're the type to worry about hitting a length requirement, this is usually not that paper, okay? Percentage of your grade, 25%. That's kind of heavy, you know. Format, same as always, MLA, so all that stuff. Again, I was looking at your papers this weekend. Most of you did a pretty solid job. If you had an issue with something really small, but as always, it's worth points, so you want to double check it before you turn it in. Final draft will we do the 19th of October, and we learned right before class, or at least I did. Today is the 6th. I'm really bad at it. So we have over a month to work on this paper. Now, the way I talk about it, because I keep saying this paper, no one knows what the hell that means, right? The way we talk about this unit, right, it's 2 phases because we have so long. The first phase, we just got to read everything. If you've looked at the syllabus, and I know you haven't, the book, you're supposed to read the first 2 chapters for today. I think it's maybe 2 more chapters for next time. It's chapter 5 for next Tuesday, because that's the longest chapter in the book, actually. Then it's probably 6, 7, then it's like 8, 9, and then, like, we're going to take 2 weeks to read a book, which is murderous to me for my soul. I read it Saturday. I just read it because it's a book. But I understand you guys need more time. So we're going to take 2-ish weeks to read a book. Then you're going to have another class day to read the article. Then we're going to start research. That's where the other 2 articles come in. We're going to talk about the research process later. Okay, don't stress too much about it right now. But all that is to say, the first half, the first phase of this unit is just getting all the reading out of the way, right? All these different ideas that the book has, that the article has, whatever you find, those people, what they have, get it all under your belt. And then the second phase will be actually writing the paper, okay? So what is the paper? There's all kinds of ways to talk about it. And I'm getting over a sore throat, so excuse me here. One of the ways I describe it is a glorified book report, okay? Book report. You guys know how to do this. I think you still have to do those, like in school or whatever. You will pull out evidence, just like you did for the last paper, okay? But now you're not so much concerned with making your own arguments, okay? That'll come in the paper after this one. What we're doing, we're taking arguments from different sources and we're synthesizing them. All that means is, say you pull something from the book, say you pull something from Jarvis, which is the article I give you, and like one of the other articles, you have a quotation, they're like, here's where all these people agree, and here's what they agree on, you know, like this one specific idea, and here's what that means, right? And that'd be, quite honestly, kind of a longish body paragraph. You do all that work. And then in the next paragraph, maybe you pull something from Vonnegut again, you don't bother with Jarvis at all, you pull from both of your other sources. You're like, they actually disagree a little bit with that last point, and here's how, right? And all of a sudden you have another body paragraph where you're talking about a specific idea, and you move through the paper like that. The whole idea is you're taking your 4 sources, Vonnegut, Jarvis, the 2 you find, you're kind of tying them together in different ways, okay? That's the whole paper. Questions about that? Okay. So all that said, the biggest issue, other than just reading everything, for this paper is organization. Is legit taking ideas. I mean, there's 250 pages in this book, right? There's a lot of stuff in this book. Taking ideas and figuring out how to not just pose them in a way that makes sense to me, but also to have them talk to each other. You'll probably hear me say that a lot in this unit too. Put your texts into conversation with one another, okay? That's what we're trying to do. A little bit more about the prompt. Sources, we'll talk about that. I have a suggested thesis. We'll talk about that too, don't worry about it. Last thing I want to touch on. Generally, there are 2 organizational strategies with this paper, okay? Many of you will want to do this first one, okay? Summarize the first source, second source, third source. That's how you move through the paper, that's how you move through your paragraphs. I'm not going to forbid you from doing that, but I am going to strongly caution against it, okay? And to illustrate why, I'm actually going to talk about this one. The way I'm going to teach you the paper, the way we're going to talk about it every class, okay? Summary of topic 1, summary of topic 2. You move through the paper with ideas rather than just texts, okay? The reason for that is this. If the whole point of this paper is to put text into conversation, right? It's really hard to do if you silo them off into individual paragraphs. I've seen it done. Well, actually, I've seen this done a lot. I've only seen it done well a couple of times, okay? Basically, if you go this route, your transition game has got to be like on another planet, right? Like all the synthesis you do is in between your paragraphs. At the end of one, at the beginning of the next one, like moving in between those paragraphs. If you don't crush it there, this paper tends to not go as well. Conversely, this tends to go better for people, in my experience. Because you're putting multiple texts into each paragraph, you kind of just force yourself to put them into conversation. You see what I'm saying? So again, I'm going to teach you this way. Some of you, for whatever reason, will still do this. I wish you wouldn't. I really do. I mean it. But that's how that's going to go. Question about any of that?
Can we get like an example, maybe? Something?
We're about to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. I actually, I play a fun game with myself sometimes where I only sort of plan what we're going to do. And present tense me looks at past tense me and it's like, what the fuck, man? So on the way here, I was really debating. I've taught this paper for years. We use a video to do it. And I was really debating not showing you the video. Because it would save us about half an hour in class. We'd be able to talk about the book a little more, probably get out a little early, you know. But that really helps, because I decided right before class we would watch the video. I love the idea that in an alternate universe, I decide to not, and you don't ask the question, and at the end of class you're like, I still don't know what the fuck we're doing, right? Like,
Alternate reality.
yeah. Anyway, all right, so let's do that. What we're going to do now is a couple things. Number one, we might upset that class. I didn't design this, but I want you guys to be able to hear it. There's a lot of talky bits, and so the volume's kind of up. Anyway, it's a 20-minute video where the guy is he's going to give you the debate around whether or not student athletes should be paid. Now, this video is a couple years old, so some of it, especially super recently, is a little bit out of date, okay? Anybody who keeps up with all that jazz, like NIL, all that business, student athletes can get paid now. But that's not really why we're doing this. The reason I like this video, and the reason I have not found a better one, and I've tried, is it's only 20 minutes, and he actually does a really good job of giving you his arguments, which he is super squarely on the side of student athletes should be paid, right? But then also giving you basically the NCAA's argument, right? On all the reasons why they shouldn't. For our purposes, we're gonna do a thing with it afterwards, but I want you to take a couple notes as we watch, okay? Anytime you notice any argument, either for or against student athletes being paid, okay? I want you to jot that down. At the end, we're gonna put them up all on the board. We're gonna do a little bit of synthesis, right? That's the idea. And again, the bonus is we might ruin their class. Anyway, here again, all right, another great experiment we're gonna do. I'm gonna try killing some of the lights. I don't know how it's gonna go. The screen might get really dark. No, I had nerds come in and try it, and he was like, if we find a remote, we could maybe fix it, but that's his way of saying it. I'm washing my hands, dog. So, anyway, here we go. Bring the lights back up. Watch that. Right. All right. So, oh, let me move this too. Good enough. To the best of our ability, if we could, just for a few minutes, the two positions that we get from the video, right? I want to try to get those up on the board. We have the NCAA's position, which is student athletes shouldn't be paid. We get all these different reasons why. And then, of course, Oliver's position, which is they should, and he gives us a bunch of reasons why he feels like that's the case. So anything you guys gleaned from the video, we can just get them up on the board real quick. What do you got? For or against, doesn't matter.
The head of the NCAA said that they're not employees, they're students.
Well, specifically, yeah. So it's that phrase.
Student athletes.
Yeah. And the whole point of this phrase is like that aspect is the most important, right? The argument there being basically, you know, we don't pay you guys to come to class. Cool. What else?
As far as for, I mean, they're making billions of dollars in ad revenue, so why would they not be paid for making that?
You have these advertisements, which we could kind of lump licensing in with. So not just ad revenue, but video games, which they did make for a long time, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm crazy excited to bring it back. But they can only do that because they finally started paying people. But yeah, just all the ways, and it's weird to think about this. If you ever watch, actually anything, but sports in particular, you know, you just think about the game. You just think about how much you enjoy it, you know, players, things like this. But the way they make money is all the commercials. Some soccer especially, or like racing will have like decals or like stuff on the uniform. All that stuff is money. And yeah, with basketball in particular, because there's so many games in their playoffs, like think of all the commercials they can kind of cram in to that. Good. What else?
Injuries,
Yeah, what about it?
like they get hurt, they like can't go pro and won't get no money from it.
So two things. So one, I would put injury over here, and I would actually put go pro over here, right? Like one argument you'll hear is, they don't make money in college, but you know, like Bryce Young, we were talking about Alabama right before class. A year from now, actually right now because they changed the rules, but even if he wasn't allowed to make any money, a year from now, he's gonna be pretty okay probably. You know what I mean? This side, yeah, the kid at the end of the video who got hurt, he got hurt in practice at Oklahoma, and they took his scholarship, and he had to leave school. Bananas to me that that's legal. You know? But yeah. Good? What else we got?
Because in most schools, they end up not even breaking even.
The nonprofit business, what'd you have, Mom?
They said they can't be paid because they're amateurs.
Yeah, I would love to, for the sake of not having a bunch, but yeah, like that whole component translates to amateurism, you know? Yeah, like some of you may play like intramural stuff or whatever. Like you're not getting paid for that. It's just part of the student experience, right? Like it's for sure.
There's an entire, so because it's college basketball or any sport,
Yeah.
you're still restricted to the level of professional. Even though there's going to come back a little, they still have that 400 page.
Yeah. Well, see, yeah, we could actually put that, I think, on, because like this side would say, look, man, when you show up day one, you sign a contract type of thing that says you agree to all the rules. This side, it's kind of implied when he talks about how many rules there are. Dude, you don't even read the thing when you update your phone. You know what I'm saying? Like, now is it 400 pages? Yeah, no one has ever read that, right? Okay, we got a couple more we can put up here.
You know, like family situations, like they like with Jalen Rose, like his brother was almost for the drive while he was in college.
And again, I would put that under a slightly bigger umbrella. Really early in the video, they talk about Shabazz Napier, and I don't know if that's clear. He's talking about there's hungry nights. He's saying he doesn't have food.
Yeah.
He's saying he doesn't have money for food.
Like, does have time to even eat? Or like,
No. He didn't have time to fucking go get a job to make money to pay for food. Like he so anyway, I would. Just human needs. That these are human beings who need certain things, not even want, but need certain things. And that this is America. If you don't have money, it's really hard to get that stuff. For sure. What else? There's a couple more. We kind of even touched on one just now with the time question. What's Richard Sherman's point?
Like the time scheduling, like
Yeah.
that he busy all the time.
He describes that schedule, and he went to Stanford, by the way. like you guys, some of you may struggle with time management, you know? Just imagine if you had a sport where you had like practice and meetings and all this other on top of whatever else you got going on. Like, you telling me you're gonna get a job, right, with that schedule? No. Is there anything else? There's probably a couple. This is pretty good. Yeah, I'll put a couple more here. We talk about coaches and how they're mentors. Now, to be fair, they took some pretty incendiary videos from coaches. Not all coaches are necessarily like that. However, my dad was a coach. He was like that. So I mean, like it's not. I don't think it's totally unfair, right? Anyway. Oh, and then Dabo Swinney uses this word that you guys may have heard before in your lives. Questions of entitlement, right? Student athletes feel like they deserve to be paid type of thing. That's pretty good. There's more, but for the sake of time, that's plenty. Here's what I want to do with this, okay? This is all, to be clear, meant to be an example. So, because sometimes people get confused, pay very close attention to what I'm about to say. In no way are we writing our paper about whether or not college athletes should be paid, okay? Sometimes I get papers and I have a little laugh and then I get real worried about you. We're not doing that, okay? It's just for an example. Now, this is basically a text. Everything Mark Emmert, the head of the NCAA, said is one text, right? All these arguments, the thesis would be why student athletes shouldn't be paid, right? That's like an article. This other text is Oliver's position, the counter position. What I want to try to do, just for a couple minutes, we got to try to find connections between an idea on this side and an idea on this side. And sometimes that can be, I mean, there's going to be obvious connections between like this and this or whatever, right? But we got to try to cross lines between these texts, okay? So, does anybody see like one connection we could make between this side and this side? They speak to each other, yeah.
The mentors and coaches and stuff get paid off of advertisements and TV. So
Like some, part of that money goes to paying these guys. And I guess, I mean, we didn't quite put it up here, but yeah, what coaches make. And again, he only gives us like kind of the top tier. It's not like all coaches make millions of dollars, right? But somebody like Nick Saban, somebody like John Calipari, those guys, even lower tier, like Oregon just got housed this weekend, got the brakes beat off them. I guarantee their coach makes like a couple million, like that's just kind of how much you make at that level. But yeah, the idea that that's part of where the money comes from. Okay. Can we now, and this is the key bit, okay? Can we now connect this to anything else? Or can we go somewhere else from here? We're gonna spiderweb this thing a little bit. Can we connect, for instance, advertisement money to anything else? Explain that for me.
To a nonprofit.
Yeah, I think that'd be the easier one.
Connecting, so they said a nonprofit, but they use all the advertisements making billions.
Yeah, like you're bringing in a lot of money. You're gonna tell me like you're breaking even on this? And again, this video is a couple years old, but that'd be even harder these days. Like the Big Ten just signed a new deal. It's like $1 billion or something. I think it's more than that. That all the universities are going to split for football. Like, so yeah, kind of calls this into question. Along with maybe it's hard to be a mentor when you're so dissimilar from your mentees, I guess, in regards to the payment. Okay. Any other connections you feel like we could make?
Between going pro and injury, it's like your odds of going pro are already like below 2%, and just factor in just like, and once you get injured, that's it. You're immediately.
Yeah, I mean, well, somebody, what happened?
I think Joe is an example of that. When you get injured, but still.
Yeah, I mean, there's gonna be what's his name? Jalen Smith from Notre Dame played in their bowl game a couple years ago, tore up his knee, and he went in the NFL, but he went in the second round, which is a loss of several $1 million. And now he's actually out of the league. Like, he only played for a couple years, and so even if, and he was good, he was very good, it kind of, this is always a specter with any physical activity, What's the other side of the injury plate, though? Not just going pro, but how does he bring it up in the video?
You lose your scholarship.
Yeah. With that in mind, could we talk about anything else up here? The idea if you get hurt doing the sport, they can take a scholarship from you.
On the fact that they're student athletes.
What about that?
If you not only get injured, you can't play the sport, but you also can't be a student anymore.
Good. So if this is the most important, and that is kind of the fairy tale that they tell, if this part gets you hurt, I mean, you kind of lose that part too. Get the fuck out with your bum ass knee. We need people who can dunk, right? Like, it's kind of, yeah. Any other connections you feel like we can make off of either one of those?
I feel like that's only if you banking on your scholarship and go to school.
For sure, but a lot of people, like student athletes especially, that's the whole selling point is we pay you with a scholarship. Can we make any other connections here? Feel-
Student athletes and schedule.
What's up now?
Student athletes and schedule.
Yeah, go for it.
Like being a student, is hard enough in college, but being an athlete is just almost seems impossible sometimes.
Well, and again, it's almost like if this is the most important, how can you square the way Richard Sherman describes being a student athlete? At no point does it sound like they really want him to succeed or that they even care, right?
They pretty much have the role swap where athlete is before being a student.
Yeah, well, and again, if you're at one of these really big schools where, football or basketball, for the most part, pull in a bunch of money, it makes sense that is how that would be, but they're so dishonest with how, right? Like, that's kind of the point. All right, there's more we could do here. For instance, we actually even left out, I'll add to this. That paper classes business, where student athletes were getting fake classes to bump up their GPA. That really kind of, another way I might write that up here is like education ? Because like, again, if this is the most important, but then you're throwing these kids into fake classes or they're taking Swahili, but not really, right? Like,
Well, like some because basketball, like I know, well, I'm not 100% sure if college football is the same way, but like basketball, you can go ahead and like go to the NBA draft and play. Like you don't have to stay.
after a year,
Yeah.
they have the one and done rule. Yeah, they don't cover that in the video, but again, that's all of it seems to be for show, basically. Like, so we can say that we're doing one thing when in fact we're doing another, All right, so what have we done here? Basically, we started to piece together two different body paragraphs, okay? The first one, I think, I'm not quite as sold on how well that would go, because we start with advertising money and kind of where it ends up, we'd have to see. But I think we really got traction with the second one when it came to, we started with injury and going pro, I think, but we really caught our stride when we got to the question of student athletes and basically how that gets flipped, if we're being more honest, and all the ways that it impacts these kids once you kind of acknowledge that. When it comes to a paper, okay, again, this would be like one text, this would be like another. For your paper, you're gonna have two more on either side of those, right? And you're gonna have ideas in all of them. Some places they'll agree. In this case, some places they agree pretty strong, disagree pretty strongly, right? and you're just making connections to begin with. Sometimes they don't work super well, other times they work great, and all of a sudden you have a body paragraph and you're really rolling. That's how, generally speaking, this paper works, okay? So when I tell you it's about organization, what I mean, it's about organizing information, not just on the page, like when it comes to a paper, but in your own brain. It's gonna be a lot. This is the part where I hardcore recommend to you, take some notes. I know you don't, and I know many of you won't. I'm telling you, take some notes, even if it's cursory, right? If something strikes you as important or interesting or whatever, a little thing with a page number, by the way, help yourself out. Give yourself page numbers, because you want to go find it later, and you have no fucking idea how to do that unless you have a way, right? Page number. If it's an electronic copy, give yourself a little phrase that you can Control F and look for. Like, help yourself out, okay? Because at some point you're going to want to do something like this, and this is how you'll build your paper. Questions about any of that? I have to ask for my own edification. Does that help a little bit with like what the paper is? Okay. Because I was like 50-50 on not doing this. So it's very funny to me in a dark way. All right. Here's what we're going to do now. What time is it, by the way?
11:56.
Oh, shit. Okay. We got a lot to do and not much time to do it. So let's make that happen. Mainly what I want to do today, you were to read chapters 1 and 2. Don't tell me if you didn't. You're just going to really bum me out. I want to try to get you guys like feeling kind of okay at least about how the book works. So, main characters in your estimation. And we've only read 2 chapters, so but anybody who seems to you like it might be a main character, could you give me somebody? Billy for sure. Weary. And he more often, I think, calls him O'Hare, but yeah, Bernard, good.
The lady that is O'Hare's wife.
Oh yeah, Mary, good. Anybody else? This is most of them to this point. There's one guy you guys always leave out, and it's funny to me that you do this. Good. You guys almost never mention him. And I know why. The reason is almost everything you've ever read before, there's a narrator, but he's not a character like this, right? This guy's a full-on character in the book. And he's not going away, by the way. He's going to keep cropping up. It's weird. All right. Very briefly, if we could describe these people, how might we do that? I don't care who we start with. Go ahead.
Mary was the wife of the firm that he went to go visit, and that she
Yep.
was like, why are you going to make war be portrayed this way when in reality it's this way, and you guys lived through it. She's
Yep.
the one that like inspired his book.
Yeah, the way I kind of think of her, she's almost like the moral compass. She has this assumption about it's the narrative. It's Vonnegut, but it's not. Like, we really can't call him Vonnegut because he's a character in a book, but you know, he's loosely Vonnegut. But she has all these assumptions about him. She's like, you're gonna like make it look cool. You're gonna make it into a movie. And again, if you've ever seen a war movie, it almost always looks really fucking cool, right? It looks pretty badass, typically. So she's not wrong. And he's like, I'm not gonna do that. It's gonna be different. So that's her function. Good, because she's worried about her kids, right? What's up?
He dedicates the book to him.
He does. He does.
And he actually named the book Joker's Crusade there.
Yeah. This is a deep book. Anyway. Good. What else we got? Any of these other characters? We got to move quicker than I'd like, by the way. So.
Billy's like, would you consider him the protagonist?
He is. Why do you have a question about that?
I think the protagonist, I think more like the hero. I would consider. I've read the book before.
Okay, good. We'll try to keep spoilers to a minimum if you could, but he's, if you had to describe his personality, how would you do that? Like, what kind of a guy is he?
Scatterbrained.
Yeah, well, he's scattered in time, right? But the word I always come to, the best one I can think of is apathetic. Like, you may or may not care sometimes. Some of you may or may not care right now. But Billy is like that always. I believe it's in the section you read. He's behind enemy lines in World War II Germany. Do you guys know what that means? He's surrounded by fucking Nazis. Like, that's a bad day. And he leans against a tree and he just wishes he could become steam. It's just like, what the fuck? So he's, more than any other character I've ever encountered, he is apathy, like incarnate. If you can make apathy into a human being, that's Billy. And he's also unstuck in time, which we'll talk about probably next time, but that's pretty central to his character as well, right? He gets kicked around temporally. Okay. What about Weary?
He's like a very dark person, I guess you could say. He talks
He's into
about-
torture.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's more complicated, and we'll talk about him next time. But yeah, I mean, he's kind of an asshole, right? Like, I do think there's more to him. But again, for time's sake, asshole works. We're not.
I think he's selfish too because he just wants to look like a hero to other people.
He does.
Billy.
He does. Again, I'm gonna say there's more to him, but for sure, I think we've accurately summed up 75% of him with those two words. Okay. All right. What about O'Hare? We really only learned like 2 things about him, but they're pretty important.
He's an
Old friend. More specifically, he's an old what? Huh? Yeah, he's a veteran, just like the narrator, right? The narrator comes to his house, wants to talk about it, right? What's the deal with O'Hare, though?
You don't remember anything?
He says he doesn't remember anything. You know those years we fought in World War II? You remember that, right? And he's like, mm-mm. Now, you may have just glossed right over it, but
Sounds like he wants to forget it.
it sounds like he don't want to talk about it. He remembers, like, let's be serious, but he don't want to talk about it. Yeah. And that tells you something, doesn't it? That tells you something pretty important about that guy and his experience.
Because even the narrator at the end of the first chapter says this book's written by Pillar of Salt. I mean, he's one that wants to look back, and O'Hare is someone who doesn't want to look back.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that pillar of salt at some point too. But yeah, it's a real thing, and I say that having never been in war myself, which is pretty great. Yeah, World War II, man, like Jesus Christ. Anyway, last but not least, the narrator. What's his big thing? And you kind of touched on it here, but like, what do we know about him? What about that book?
He's giving us like inspiration, the details not specific.
Yeah,
He's tried to write it several times and then he just throws
says
it
he's
out.
throwing out thousands of pages. You guys, I mean, you sweat 3 pages. Can you imagine writing thousands? Just chucking them? What is that about? Why do you think he's doing that? That tells you something about him. What's up?
Lily doesn't like the way it sounds or something.
Yeah,
Perfectionist.
but in what way?
He's not sure what story he wants to tell.
He wants to tell the story.
He wants to get it right. And that's kind of a loaded phrase, okay? But in this particular case, the little bit we know about him, the little bit we know about his buddy, how serious a thing they lived through together, right? He wants to get it right. He tells you about all the people he knew that died. He alludes to some of the shit he saw. The way I read that is to him, it would feel like a disservice to all of that if he didn't get this right in some way. Like, he feels a lot of pressure to do it a proper service. Does that make sense? So he keeps throwing shit out. He can't nail it. And the funny thing is, we talked about this before class, this is him nailing it. This is him going, yeah, that's right. We'll talk about that next time. All right. Last thing we got to do with 10 minutes. This is also why I almost didn't show you guys the video. I was worried about this. Anyway, this is one of my favorite quotations from chapters 1 and 2. The gun made a ripping sound, like the opening of the zipper on the fly of God Almighty. Now, you guys, this is not a pop quiz. You don't have to have you don't have to know what this is, okay? But if I wanted to use this in a paper, what are some of the things I would need to have to do that? There's a couple easy things we can do from the jump, right? What do we do? We need context, which we're going to do here in a second. What else do we need?
Quotation marks.
We need quotation marks. Good. What else do we need?
Page numbers.
Good. We need a citation. In my book, it's at the bottom of page 43, and it goes on to page 44. That's what that would look like. Now, the context here at the bottom of page 43, and if I were a little wiser, I would have bookmarked that page. The context here, we just met Weary. This is our introduction to Weary. As a part of a gun crew, Weary had helped to fire one shot in anger from a 57 millimeter anti-tank gun. And then we get that. So when they say the gun, what are they referencing?
The anti-tank gun.
Good. So for context, we're going to have to mention that. What specifically are they telling us about the gun? What are they describing?
The sound.
The sound of it.
Shockwave.
That's good enough. All right. So look, you could, to illustrate my point, by the way, that I know I've said way too often right now, it's not what these texts say, it's how they say it. You could say this another way. What are we saying about the gun, if you could put it into simpler words? The gun is what?
Loud. Really loud.
Really fucking loud. The gun was really fucking loud. Moving on, right? But he doesn't. And that's what I'm trying to stress to you when I say quote for language. There's interesting language here. The idea is not that interesting. Guns are loud. I imagine an anti-tank gun, that's a gun specifically meant to fight a tank, would be really loud. I got that. So how do we put it here? If I forced you, and this would be weird, I'm not doing that, but if I forced you to pick out the most interesting language, the potentially most significant language in this quotation, what might you underline? That's pretty weird. Talking about
Zipper.
a big gun. Somehow we're talking about a zipper. Yeah? Anything else?
Fly.
Zipper on the fly of, got like that whole last
Yeah.
section is weird. Anything else?
Ripping sound.
That's a little bit weird way to talk about a gun. Yeah, I'll give you that. But that kind of gets us to the next bit, which is what? There's one more bit I think we kind of need. What?
Slow.
Yeah. I mean, kind of what we've learned here is really, it's this whole last section. Now, the next part, I want to remind you of this stage. I did assign this book. I did not write it. We just said we're talking about the gun and it's loud. What are we comparing it to?
A zipper ripping it up, like ripping it up.
The sound of a big zipper,
Yeah.
right? God's zipper if he wore jeans, right? Okay. Why are we doing that? That's a weird. Can we all agree right now? That's a super weird way to talk about a gun, for sure. Why do that?
Comparing the power that God holds, because God is like almighty,
So-
to the gun.
For sure, and especially doubling down, like not just God, but God Almighty. Like use his full name. You know, we use his last name. Hello, I'm Mr. Almighty. Like yeah, supreme, omnipotent power. Yeah, kind of conveyed in that last part. But what is that power in this phrase?
Force.
Yeah. What's it got to do with that gun?
He's got to kill someone. Or kill the tank, I guess.
Yeah. What's it got to do with the opening of the zipper on the fly? What are we talking about? What about God's power? How is it made manifest in this phrase? I want to draw you guys a picture. I want you to remember, I did assign this book. I did not write it. I'm also not an artist, but look, an anti-tank gun, especially this stage in history, would have been like bolted to the ground. It would have been like a nest, essentially. It's like a piece of artillery rather. So it had like a big base, and then you have a barrel, right? That's kind of how it looks. Is that a metaphor for a dick? You tell me.
I guess I just
What's God doing here?
stick out.
Yeah. His all-powerful penis. Yeah. That's what the gun is. What the fuck? Look. For the sake of time, they're leaving, so I know we're almost out of time. We got a couple minutes, don't freak out. I'm gonna tell you a couple things. Number one, this is what's called as an omnipotent third-person narrator. What that means is that he can move around. The narrator can. Now, I will admit to you, that is weird because he's also a person in the story, so that should not be possible. But the whole book is crazy, so you got to just kind of take that on faith. Omnipotent third narrators, one of the powers they wield is they can dive into the heads of certain characters. Okay? They can do it without warning, and they can kind of tell you what those characters are thinking. For my money, the way he talks here doesn't sound like a lot of the things the narrator says in the rest of the book. To me, it sounds more like Weary, and how Weary sounds. And this is where we meet Weary. This is our introduction. So I would argue this is kind of how Weary conceptualizes that gun. It's like that. So it tells us more than a little bit about Weary's opinion of his work on the anti-tank gun and just how he conceives of power, I suppose. Power for a guy like Weary is God's penis. Not literally, okay? But metaphorically. In all the capital M man stuff we've talked about and we'll continue to talk about in this class, you got to admit, anytime you're around a group of guys, if any of them are even like 5% douchebag, somebody's going to start talking about penises. Like it's just, I don't know why, but historically, some of the oldest graffiti we have found, like in ancient Roman ruins, dicks. For sure, it's all of human history. So it's a thing. Well, but anyway, my point is this is telling you a whole lot about Weary and his mindset, and the narrator can do that, okay? The other point I want to stress to you real quick, and then I'll let you go. None of you noticed this when you read. That's okay. But I want you to understand, you skated right past God's penis. Didn't even see it. Okay? That's a big thing to miss. It just is. It's a hell of a thing to not notice. So, as you read, you may want to, I mentioned this already, take some notes. Even if, I'm fond of saying to you, even if you don't understand why a thing might be significant, if it strikes you as weird, jot it down. Give yourself a page number, right? Help yourself out. Also, maybe slow down a little bit as you read. That isn't always an option. You know, I don't know your life. But whenever possible, you might want to slow down a little bit. You might be reading too quickly. Okay? If you're skating past this. Alright. For next time, I believe it's chapters 3 and 4. What I would tell anyone who didn't read for today, first of all, God damn it. Second of all, catch up. It will get so much harder. It will come to a point, if you don't start reading probably now-ish, you're going to get crazy behind, and most students that I've had, they just stop bothering after that. Which I get, but also, don't put yourself in that position. We had to read two chapters for today, we got to read 2 chapters for next time. If you haven't done any of that, start now. Read it in bite size if you have to, but work on it. Hopefully you'll be pretty much caught up by Thursday. Your life will be easier as a result. And I'll see you then. Thank you.